Here's the thing about collapse preparation that the survival industry has spent years getting wrong. Everyone prepares for hunger. Everyone stockpiles water. Everyone has a plan for the moment. The grocery store shelves go empty and the taps run dry. And that planning isn't wrong. It's just incomplete in a way that kills quietly, slowly, and without warning. Food runs out in weeks. Water gets scarce in days. But there's a category of supply sitting between those obvious shortages that gets almost no attention because it isn't dramatic and it doesn't photograph well, and there's nothing expensive to sell around it. These are the mundane things, the everyday things, the items you consume without thinking in ways so habitual they've become invisible. When they're gone, you don't die dramatically. You deteriorate. You get infected. You can't see in the dark. Your tools stop working. And by the time you understand what's actually ending you, it's already weeks into the process. These are the 6 things that run out before food and water in any collapse, the invisible shortages, the ones that wipe out people who ate well, drank clean, and still didn't make it. Number 1, salt, not as a seasoning. As a survival chemical your body cannot produce, cannot stockpile in meaningful quantities, and cannot function without. Most people understand that salt makes food taste better. Almost nobody understands that without adequate sodium, the human body begins malfunctioning in ways that look exactly like a dozen other collapse-related problems. After heavy physical labor, which becomes constant in a grid-down scenario, you lose sodium through sweat at a rate that strips critical electrolytes within hours. The symptoms come in stages: cramping first, severe enough to incapacitate, then nausea, then confusion and cognitive failure that looks exactly like dehydration but doesn't respond to drinking more water. In severe cases, sodium deficiency causes seizures and death. And here's the cruel irony: drinking more water when you're sodium deficient makes the symptoms worse. You're diluting what little sodium remains. Salt also preserves food in a world without refrigeration. A pound of it extends the edible life of meat by weeks. Without it, every animal you trap, every fish you catch, every calorie above your immediate needs rots within days. Salt doesn't expire. It doesn't degrade. A 50-pound bag sits in a closet for years and works identically the day you need it. The average person burns through roughly half a pound of sodium per month under normal activity. Under collapse exertion, that number doubles. Plan accordingly or pay the biological price. Number 2, cutting edges. Every knife you own will dull within a week of real use, not light use. Real use. Processing game. Cutting rope, splitting wood, opening cans, shaving bark, cleaning wounds. Every task that a collapsed world demands of a blade, performed repeatedly on abrasive materials, wears an edge down faster than most people have experienced in their lives. Without a sharp edge, you cannot process food efficiently. You cannot clean wounds safely. You cannot cut cordage cleanly. A dull blade is not just inconvenient, it is dangerous. Dull blades require more force, which means more loss of control, which means more lacerations, which in a world without antibiotics means infections, which means death from a wound that should have closed in a week. The thing you need more than an expensive knife is a quality sharpening stone and the skill to use it. A whetstone costs almost nothing, weighs almost nothing, and turns a dull blade back into a working tool in 10 minutes. The skill of sharpening properly, maintaining correct angle through the stroke, is a manual competency that modern life has almost eliminated. Learn it before you need it. Practice until it's automatic. Stock multiple stones, because stones wear down too. The person who can sharpen a knife is also the person who can sharpen every knife in the group, which makes them as indispensable as the person who can close wounds. Number 3, light after dark. The grid goes down. Sunset becomes total darkness. And total darkness means a 12-hour vulnerability window every single night for as long as the collapse lasts. People consistently underestimate how debilitating complete darkness actually is until they sit inside it. You can't read. You can't treat wounds. You can't identify threats in your immediate environment. You can't move through your own shelter without risking injury. Extended darkness degrades morale and cognitive function in ways that compound over days into something that begins to look like depression and ends with decisions that shouldn't be made. Candles burn through in hours. Battery flashlights eat batteries in days. Lighters run dry. Every light source you own has a consumption rate that outpaces your ability to resupply within the first month. The sustainable answer is oil lamps. Any vegetable oil, any animal fat, any grease burns in a simple wick lamp that produces hours of usable light per small quantity of fuel. The lamp itself is improvised from a jar, a strip of cotton fabric, and 15 minutes of setup time. The fuel is available from every abandoned kitchen and restaurant in your area and can be produced continuously as long as you're processing animals for food. Make lamps now. Practice with them. Learn exactly how long a given quantity of oil lasts. The night you're sitting in total darkness trying to build a lamp for the first time is the night you realize this should have happened months ago. Number 4, soap, not for comfort. For survival against the enemy that kills more people in every historical collapse than violence does. Within 2 weeks of grid failure, without running water and functional sewage infrastructure, the sanitation conditions in any populated area degrade to levels not seen in developed countries for over a century. Human waste accumulates. Food preparation surfaces carry bacteria. Wounds contaminate. Hands carry pathogens from every touched surface into every meal prepared and every wound treated. Without soap, which kills bacteria through chemical disruption rather than simply washing them away, you are constantly reintroducing pathogens into every vulnerable surface your hands contact. The diseases that surge in these conditions are not exotic. Dysentery, cholera, typhoid, wound infections that turn septic. These kill within days at rates that historical records make uncomfortably specific. Soap can be made from two ingredients that exist in unlimited quantities in a collapse environment: animal fat and wood ash. The fat comes from any animal you process. The ash comes from any fire you burn. Combined in the right ratio, boiled down, and allowed to cure, they produce functional lye soap that performs exactly like commercial soap at essentially zero material cost. Learn this process before you need it. The chemistry is simple. The materials are everywhere. And the person who can produce soap for a group in a world where hygiene infrastructure has failed is providing something every member of that group requires every single day without exception. Number 5. Fasteners and cordage. Nails, screws, wire, rope. Every structure you build, every repair you make, every shelter you construct, every load you carry requires something to hold pieces together. Within weeks of any collapse, every hardware store in your area will be stripped of every fastener it contains by people building, repairing, and securing things under desperate conditions. The demand for fasteners in a collapse is nothing like normal times. You're not hanging pictures. You're constructing defensive barriers. You're repairing damaged structures that are now your shelter. You're building water collection systems, trap lines, storage frameworks. The consumption rate is orders of magnitude higher than your pre-collapse mental model prepared you for. The answer is dual. First, stockpile now. Nails and screws in bulk cost almost nothing and take up almost no space relative to their utility. Second, learn to build without manufactured fasteners, using techniques that predate the industrial era. Wooden pegs, lashing configurations for different loads and materials. These techniques require skill and practice, but convert freely available materials into structural connections that have held buildings together for centuries. A person who can lash a shelter frame from available materials can build functional structure from what everyone else walks past. That skill requires nothing from a store that no longer exists. Number 6. Fire starting capability beyond matches and lighters. A standard disposable lighter contains enough fuel for roughly 3,000 ignitions under ideal conditions. Under collapse conditions, with wind, wet tinder, and emergency situations where the first attempt fails, that number drops sharply. A box of 250 matches lasts less time than most people imagine when every meal requires fire to cook safely and every morning requires fire to boil water. 3 fires per day minimum. That is 90 ignitions per month. Your 2 lighters are gone in 2 months. Your matches last slightly longer. And then you are unable to boil water, unable to cook food, unable to heat your shelter, unless you learn to start fire without manufactured tools before you needed to. Ferrocerium rods produce sparks essentially indefinitely, lasting thousands of strikes before wearing down. They cost a few dollars and require practice to use effectively, which is exactly why you practice now, before your hands are cold and your tinder is wet and you have one attempt to get it right. The bow drill produces fire from nothing but wood and learned technique. No manufactured materials, no consumable resource of any kind. 2 pieces of the right wood, shaped correctly, worked with the right motion until an ember appears. A person who can reliably start a fire in rain, in wind, in cold, from materials found on the ground is solving the heating problem, the cooking problem, the water purification problem, and the morale problem simultaneously. That capability does not expire. It does not require resupply. It is yours permanently the moment it is learned. Here's what connects all 6. None of them are dramatic. There's no gear to sell, no apocalyptic footage to capture, no obvious survival aesthetic. But these are the things that end survival stories that should have had better endings. The group that ate well and drank clean and fell apart from infected wounds because they had no soap and no ability to close lacerations with clean technique. The solo survivor with food for 6 weeks and no way to preserve it past 10 days because there was no salt. The family that made it to their shelter and couldn't function after dark because every light source ran dry and nobody had ever built a lamp. You don't die from the thing you prepared for. You die from the thing that felt too mundane to prepare for. Salt, sharp edges, light after dark, sanitation, fasteners, fire without a lighter. None of them are